So this is very important. This is important because this sets up the tone. We have the Saturn Uranus dominating now, the Saturn Uranus happening then, right? This is all connected to China. All right. We see a lot of activity happening in China that is infecting the new left that gave birth around 1961-62. I don't have the date in front of me. It's about June of 62, if I believe, just before the assassination of Kennedy. All right, it became more and more radicalized as we get closer to the early 70s, right? So it was basically a student protest, and then it really, really got radicalized. And then we see it being infected by a lot of these Chinese Maoist hardline philosophies and ideas that are being adopted by the new left. Okay, so we have that. So there is a connection here. Now, on October 22nd, 2022, Xi Jinping announces the third term in power and a new top team, right? So that's what happens 2 days prior to the eclipse. On the day of the eclipse, Xi Jinping's New World Order, China plans to remake the international system by 2035, right? So his goal is to transform China into an incubator of first-tier companies that set the rules for the entire international corporate order. And China Standards 2035 stresses the importance of becoming a leader in the next generation of emerging technologies to surpass the United States and dominate the world in emerging technologies that will shape and define our technological civilization. So you could see here, looking at the eclipse, right? He's talking about a new world order. That's the ninth house. If someone says, what's the new world order or the new order, or I want to see the plan, the 5-year plan, the 10-year plan, right? That's going to be the ninth house. The implementation of that plan, proclamated by executive power, would be the 10th house. So just to give you an idea, you're seeing that eclipse in there, right? He's talking about the dreams and ideals of what is going to make China great. The other thing he addresses in that speech is that he's basically doubling down, right? While the rest of the world moved on with COVID, people in Chinese cities were still subject to dystopian levels of control and surveillance, up to and including being welded, right? That's not an exaggeration, welded inside their own homes. So Xi talked quite a bit about COVID in his follow-up speech. He's making proclamations, announcements of China's plan for global dominance, right? All that good stuff that the media continues to ignore, play down, obfuscate, and right, since they basically get a lot of their sponsorship from China. So this was followed up by the total lunar eclipse. We could see that total lunar eclipse happening here now, almost right dead on the 10th house, right again in the 9th house cusp, right on Venus's natal. So basically this lunar eclipse is right on the Chinese natal Venus and making a very tight square to the Mars-Pluto conjunction in the 7th house, right? And when this happens, we start seeing massive discontent starting to break out. And we see shortly thereafter, a blaze of protest in China is triggered, right? We see protests demanding an end to the COVID lockdowns breaking out in the center of Shanghai, right? Following an outrage over an apartment building fire in Xinjiang, killing over 10 people. And those who perished in the fire were basically bolted in, trapped in their apartments under the strict COVID lockdown measures. And so basically the flames spread up from the 15th to the 17th floor, with smoke billowing up to the 21st floor, according to multiple state media reports. And the blaze took around 3 hours to extinguish because the firemen couldn't even get into the building. And the deaths and injuries were all caused by inhalation of toxic fumes, with those taken to the hospital, many of them survived. The initial investigation showed that the fire was sparked by a power strip in a bedroom of one of the 15th floor apartments. So you could see here, we have this eclipse. The scenario is set up here. We've got the Mars, Pluto, Venus square, which is a very powerful factor. You know, it's a dominant theme in China's chart. And you're seeing this eclipse hit it dead on. This is followed up on November 24th with the apartment building fire. Note here, what do we see? We see Mars rising, right? Now I put 741. We know it was around, this is exactly when Mars conjuncts the ascendant, but we know it was around 740, between 730, 740, when the fire was reported. And, you know, of course, you know, we don't know exactly when the fire exactly started. So using this chart, what do we see here? We see a very dominant Saturn, right? Oppressive authority, Saturn square Uranus. Saturn square Uranus, a very oppressive authoritarian COVID lockdown measures by the government. And then we see this fire break out. And this is all happening around the time of the following new moon, which is essentially, you know, 28 days from the eclipse. So now what's interesting is what they keep saying. People were just saying, I'm anti-COVID, stop locking me in. What happened shortly thereafter, down with the Chinese Communist Party and remove Xi Jinping from office. Now, if you look at the blaze triggering large-scale protests in China, you could see right through here, right through the major cities here. And so according to the US-funded China Dissent Monitor operated by Freedom House, at least 43 large-scale protests and demonstrations took place in 22 cities across China. And we could see that Mars line, right, going right through these cities here, all in the western part of China. And then we could see the Jupiter-Neptune lines dominating here, right through Beijing, Shanghai, right, Wuhan, these other major cities. So essentially, we're seeing massive breakout cracks in the Great Firewall of China. And the fact that the eclipses, right, we're seeing with Xi Jinping doubles down on his COVID policies. China's going to take over the world. We're going to dominate. We're going to win, right? He comes out really strong. And then the following eclipse, we see things really go, and we see this sort of the cracks in the wall of China begin to brew, right? We see the chips and the cracks, they're all happening. They begin. And then we see here, give me liberty or give me death, right? So again, you know, give me liberty or give me death is a quotation attributed to American politician and orator Patrick Henry from a speech he made to the Second Virginia Convention on March 23rd, 1775 at St. John's Church in Richmond, Virginia. And this mind, by the way, right, this saying spread throughout the American colonies just before the breakout of the Revolutionary War. So it was in people was like, we've had it, no more, right? The British really didn't get it. That's one of the reasons why the British couldn't respond fast enough, because they did not understand the level of massive discontent, right? And we saw, before the Revolutionary War broke out, we saw widespread protests and people were striking and people were dumping tea, right? The Boston Tea Party. There was numerous, you know, we all know about the Boston Tea Party like it was a one-off event, but there were many things brewing in the American colonies that the British they were aware of it, but they underestimated, like China's doing now, they underestimated the consequences of what was coming. They were not monitoring the level of unrest that was occurring, and the blowback from that, or the consequences of that, led to a formal break and military conflict. So we're seeing the same thing playing out here with China, right? So I'm going to read off a letter here. This letter got throughout China. So the Chinese tell why they're protesting Xi, give me liberty or give me death. They're not just saying, hey, lift COVID, we're cool, Xi, we like you, CCP, you're fine, we're all good with you. No, They are saying now, give me liberty or give me death. And they are bringing out his name. Now you have to understand, if you say online out loud, right, CCP, step down, this is CCP, you say any anti-government rhetoric, you cannot use Xi Jinping's name in vain. You cannot say anything, right? You will go to federal Chinese prison, right? Or you'll be sent somewhere out in Tibet, right? You'll be forgotten, right? So you have to understand, when people are making these statements here, they're putting it out there. They're going to the American press. They're putting it out on the internet. It's spreading like a virus everywhere, right? So I want to read this quote here. I'm a software engineer from Beijing. This got out on the internet and this spread like a virus. This got into American media. This got picked up by the New York Times, New York Post. Although the New York Times has been a bit apologetic about Xi Jinping's policies, but are we surprised? I'm just going to read it out loud. I'm a software engineer from Beijing. The zero COVID policy that has gone on for 3 years has devastated the economy, and the company I work for is on the verge of collapse. I and other employees are lucky to receive 1/3 of our normal salary. We are all struggling to pay our bills and just to get through daily life. We are not afraid of COVID-19, but rather of the hell that we are now living. We are tired of being deceived by the powerful year after year. We demand an immediate end to the wrong-headed and absurd zero COVID policy. Allow the people to enjoy all the freedoms that are guaranteed by our Constitution and the one-party dictatorship. Give me liberty or give me death. All right. So the gloves have come off. There's no doubt about it. This is spreading all over China. CNN will not report. The astrologers are not talking about it, right? We're more focused on Christmas and all these nice things, right? Which is fine. But there's another half of the world that has over 1.2 billion people that is blowing apart, right? All over the place.
To watch the full presentation and more like this on geopolitics, the economy, and world events from an archetypal and mundane astrological perspective, join the Global Transformation Astrology membership. Go to gta.williamstickevers.com. Become a GTA member today.